if we go into the resources section and go into the essays and articles, there are two in particular, possibly even three actually. There's this essay, The Royal We, which is important, about the character and nature of what the head of state, the monarch, should be like under the English Constitution. And it's pretty short. I mean, it's, look, there we've got to the references already, so it's really quite a. There it is. It's only sort of like a page. I would really urge people to read that, because what that talks about is the sort of the peaceful nature and the protective nature of what the head of state as the monarch, the king or queen, should be like under the English Constitution. What is their character? And then the other one, which you should look at, is that one as well, actually. The Constitution, a safe container for our anarchy, is another one, a little bit longer, quite interesting. But even more importantly is this one here. When is a facade not a facade? Because what this talks about is the sort of obfuscatory, gaslighting nature of our current establishment, and where the Glorious Revolution was taking us, by the way, into the nature of the monarchy. And this is all about what we've just been talking about the sort of the obfuscation, the gaslighting. You can see here, again, the king. Actually, I won't read that out, because what that's talking about is this fellow here, who's an author who almost like reveals the ridiculousness of his arguments just by. You can actually see it. That's what the article demonstrates, is some of the authors that prop up the new rule of law, the distorted rule of law, and how they defeat their own arguments. And again, it's not a very long essay. It's quite short, a little bit longer than the last one, and we get down to references there as well. But I really would urge people to have a read of that, because it really demonstrates this crazy idea of how you're trying to fit a round peg in a square hole. Yeah. How if you try to prop up the new rule of law following the Glorious Revolution, you're going to get yourself into all sorts of difficulties, circular arguments. You're not going to be able to find the line of authority back. You're going to defeat your own logic. It's really interesting. So I would fully recommend the reading of that one.
It's the separation of powers, isn't it, as well? It's that whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, the separation of powers is to me is just more gaslighting.
Yeah.
Because actually we've never had separation of powers. Even now they talk about the king in Parliament.
Yeah.
And now what have you got? You've actually got the executive, which is the cabinet office, essentially functioning right within the legislature. Remember, of course, that the upper house was really a court. They were justices, they were judges.
Yeah.
So you've got a link there with the judiciary and the legislature anyway. So this idea that we have the separation of powers, and in fact, who is the judiciary really ultimately in the authentic constitution? It's the people. So it's not a branch of the government itself that are ultimately meant to be the judiciary. It's the people themselves that are meant to be the judiciary. So it's just, can I use this word? Bullshit. It's just
yeah.
It's just bullshit. I'm sorry. It really doesn't work like that. Ultimately, what is the government? The government is one thing. It's under the responsibility of the king, who basically, ultimately, everything comes back to him in responsibility. Yes, he can delegate, but ultimately it's his responsibility. And therefore, you know who you can hold to account at the top if things are not going right. And remember that the government's meant to be doing a hell of a lot less than it is at the moment. It's meant to be much smaller. It's meant to be, its single purpose in a way is nothing more than to protect the people in their role of governing their own justice and law. That's it. That's all it's doing. That's all it has the legitimacy to do. So when you think of that being of what the government is, that's its role, and that's what the king is ultimately doing. He doesn't have much power, really. Ultimately, he has a hell of a lot of responsibility, but not really that much power. So yeah, there's a little bit of an offshoot into how it's ultimately supposed to be.
And it's a bit concerning with what's going on at the minute with the
Very.
attack on trial by jury as well, because that check, if it is usurped anymore, is going to be a big issue. We're never
Yeah,
going to
we're
get
losing
back.
chunks of our constitutional law every 3 months. And yet people are not really noticing it. They're not focusing on it. They're not, as I say, I said in a Q&A with Ben Rubin last night, that we're having to play sort of whack-a-mole every week because there's a new proposed bill in Parliament that's just whittling away at one's, individual fundamental rights. Um, and instead of dealing with each piece of legislation every week, what we really should be doing is correcting people's understanding that the government has no business to be legislating that thing in the first place. There's a set of standards that they've broken fundamentally. There are certain things that they can't legislate for.
Yeah,
Right. And the only way that you can do that is for the people at large to have a sense of what the constitutional limitations are on government. Government doesn't have that understanding at the moment, that it's not actually them that create or write the constitution. Funnily enough, okay, their legislative powers work inside a limited box that is framed by the Constitution itself. So they have limitations on what they can legislate for, but nobody's kind of saying that.
yeah.
Nobody's. Yeah, we need everybody talking about that simple idea or concept that no, the government is not allowed to do what it likes just because it's got authority in legislation. Yeah, legislation's fundamentally limited in what it can be, what it can do.
And this is why it keeps coming back to the whole petitioning thing that concerns me, because it's always like, oh, we need to petition the government.
Yeah.
There isn't really any sort of power there. And to me, it's
Absolutely.
not
It's the wrong
constitutional.
language.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you can't do that. Sorry, government. You don't, there are things you
Yeah.
can't do. Have you not noticed this?
Because the constitution is the rule of law. It's meant to sit above
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
No.
Precisely. Yeah. If I just read out this paragraph here, um, so this statement leads to a number of questions. The one above, it doesn't matter, you don't need to see that. The most important being, how is it not a breach of the Constitution to establish such political conventions? This is to do with the removing the king's prerogative without asking the people. If the Constitution has in fact been changed in relation to the Bill of Rights in this way, then why would a king take on his this legal burden, making promises to govern the country according to the law of the land, if he has no power to do so because of these conventions? And we're talking about the removal of his prerogative. Why do we take seriously the coronation ceremony and the oath taken there if it has no power? Is it right to take such an oath if you know you do not have such power? If this is the case and the king has no power, but bears all the liability, since the legal position of the crown is unchanged, then does the crown have an indemnity? And if so, from whom? If everyone is so content with these changes, why do we have to go through the rigmarole of the coronation ceremony and the solemn promises made there at all? Why does the king have to open parliament if we are all agreed and happy that it is just for show? Is it for the tourists? So I mean, there's more to this, which it's absolutely
No, that's brilliant. That's
yeah.
brilliant.
Well, it asks all these bloody awkward questions, basically, you know, um, that I've just been talking about. You know, it doesn't make sense. You're going to get you very quickly you start to see this new rule of law doesn't make any sense at all. So I just thought I'll stop sharing at that point. But that's worth reading, definitely. When is a facade not a facade?
It's like all the prerogative powers, though. They all seem to be for show. Even
They claim they are for show. Yes, exactly. They
like
yes.
dissolving parliament or even collapsing the government or royal assent, which we've already spoke about.
Yeah.
What I find interesting about the prerogative regarding the government is the prime minister.
Yeah.
What's the situation there?
Yeah, well, there's a particularly peculiar business to do with the fact that the Prime Minister can borrow the King's prerogative and use it. It's just,
It's crazy,
I mean,
isn't it?
how anyone can believe this stuff? It's yeah. Anyway,
You'll like this, Will.
oh yes,
So this is about the non-jurors. Ironically, five of the seven bishops became non-jurors when Mary and William of Orange were crowned as joint monarchs during the Glorious Revolution. They refused to take the oath of allegiance to William and Mary. They believed that their oath of allegiance to James was binding and could not be transferred to William III and Mary II after the Glorious Revolution. For them, the oath was a sacred commitment, and breaking it would violate their moral and religious principles. Their stance was rooted in their belief that James II remained their lawful king.
wow,
So it was William Sancroft who was the Archbishop of Canterbury at the time, and then
yes.
further bishops William Lloyd, Francis Turner, John Lake, Thomas Ken. One must question the moral and religious principles of Henry Compton, who was part of the Immortal Seven, who broke his oath of allegiance to James II in favour of a foreign invader, William of Orange.
Yeah, very telling, very interesting. And of course we'll get on to the Immortal Seven shortly, but yeah,
The Immortal Seven comprised of Henry Compton, Thomas Osborne, Edward Russell, Charles Talbot, Richard Lumley, and William Cavendish, and Henry Sidney. On the 30th of June 1688, Sidney drafted a letter of invitation to William of Orange asking him to help save the religion, laws, and liberties of England. William had already decided to invade England long before any invitation was drawn up. It was William who demanded the letter of invitation to further legitimise an invasion of England. It was a propaganda tool to help gain support on the ground. The Immortal Seven consisted of a few political exiles, an out-of-favour naval officer, and a suspended bishop. Self-interested Protestants willing to invite foreign military intervention in the hope they would later be rewarded with titles, wealth, and estates. 6 received titles and estates not long after the revolution.
yes, they weren't uh, massively prominent people, weren't massively successful. In fact, in Reluctant Revolutionaries, W.A. Speck, who you've been quoting from already, he was saying at one point that the really substantial politicians, the ones that you could respect, who were not in favour with James, so not the really substantial politicians whom James had offended, declined to become involved. Halifax, prudent and cautious as ever, would not commit himself. The Earl of Nottingham at first joined in, then got cold feet and backed down. He saith 'tis scruples of conscience. So yes, the effective ones, the ones that actually might have been just did thought, no, I'm not going anywhere near this.
And the reason being, because I read a quote from another book, was because they believed the country and the people could deal with it.
Yes, exactly.
So this gives a bit of detail of who they actually were individually, and there's some really interesting points. So Charles Talbot Earl of Shrewsbury, he was actually born of Roman Catholic parents and practiced Catholicism up until 1679. He converted to the Church of England, surprisingly, during the Popish plot.
Oh yeah, how convenient.
He was one of the peers that Sir John Fenwick brought accusations of treason against as part of the Jacobite conspiracy before he was executed. You won't know about that case, but I cover it later on. I won't go into detail about it, but Sir John Fenwick actually picked him out, Shrewsbury, as being part of a Jacobite conspiracy.
Yeah. Okay.
Because he was well known for changing sides.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
His loyalties when, he used to get cold feet. He wouldn't commit to anything.
Well, you mean he didn't have any principles?
I'm trying to say it in a
No,
nice around way.
surely not.
So moving on to Edward Russell, who was later the Earl of Oxford. In 1683, Edward Russell ceased to be employed and had fallen out of favour with the king due to his brother's involvement in the Rye House plot. He was also guilty of financial misconduct. I don't know whether he was found guilty, that might be questionable, but there was certainly accusations against him regarding naval funds,
Naval
that he was
funds.
kind of taking funds for his own estate.
Yeah.
And just to make everyone aware, the Rye House plot was a plot to assassinate Charles II and James,
Yes.
and Edward Russell's brother was involved.
Fully involved. Yes.
And it was the same with Henry Sidney.
Yeah.
So Sidney drafted the letter of invitation sent to William of Orange asking for military intervention to help remove James from the throne. Sidney, like Russell, had lost his brother. Is that Algernon?
Algernon. Yeah.
To the Rye House plot. He was an exclusionist, which led to his dismissal. He returned to the Netherlands in 1682 and served in an English regiment. He assisted William of Orange at the Battle of the Boyne. Henry Compton, who we touched on, he wasn't actually part of the seven bishops. He'd been suspended at that point by the Ecclesiastical Courts of Commission. Compton lost his position through suspension in 1685. Compton actually married Mary and William of Orange in 1677. He strongly opposed Roman Catholicism on the ascent of James II. He broke his oath of allegiance, which we touched on the previous slide. Do you know what was interesting about Mary and William of Orange? That James wasn't happy with that. He wasn't happy with that. It was Charles II who played a bigger part than that.
Right. Yes.
Because James had been exiled, hadn't he?
Yes, that's right.
When
Yes.
the exclusion crisis, wasn't he in Scotland at the time?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's
his
interesting.
daughters were being reared by Protestant bishops, which is another point, a good
Yeah.
point to make, because obviously they've been indoctrinated with the Protestant religion.
Yeah.
Thomas Osborne, later the first Duke of Leeds, he actually arranged the marriage of Mary and William of Orange. He was charged with corruption and embezzlement while in his role of Lord High Treasurer. In 1695, he was charged with taking a bribe from the East India Company, who were involved in the slave trade, to pass a bill.
Very respectable bunch.
You couldn't write it, could you really?
That's so dodgy.
William Cavendish, the first Duke of Devonshire, he drew up articles of impeachment for Thomas Osborne.
Yeah.
We both conspired for this. This is how moral they are. So he wrote up articles of impeachment for Thomas Osborne, Lord Danby. He himself was heavily fined and imprisoned for fighting in court. And he played an active role in one of his last roles, actually, in the Union of Scotland. But some
Right.
some historians suggest he was he was fined something ridiculous like 30,000. Whatever that would amount to in today's money is a lot.
Unbelievable.
So
Yeah.
maybe his involvement in this was to get round that case and that fine. He was
Yes.
actually imprisoned for a while as well in the Tower.
Yeah. Interesting.
And the last one, Richard Lumley, first Earl of Scarborough. Lumley, like Talbot, was brought up as a Roman Catholic and later turned Protestant around 1685. Also took part in the Battle of the Boyne. So two of the seven were previously Catholics. The letter of invitation, June the 30th, 1688. I'll just read it out. I don't know how to, I think that's William's cousin. I don't know how to pronounce that name at all. We have great,
Zulestein.
is it Sulestein?
I don't know. I'm
That's how
guessing.
it reads, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We have great satisfaction to find by 35 and since by M. Zulestein that your highness is so ready and willing to give us such assistances as they have related to us. We have great reason to believe that we shall be every day in a worse condition than we are and less able to defend ourselves, and therefore we do earnestly wish we might be so happy as to find a remedy before it be too late for us to contribute to our own deliverance. But although these be our wishes, yet we will by no means put your highness into any expectations which may misguide your own counsels in this matter, so that the best advice we can give is to inform your highness truly both of the state of things here at this time and of the difficulties which appear to us. As to the first, the people are so generally dissatisfied with the present conduct of the government in relation to their religion, liberties, and properties, all which have been greatly invaded, and they are in such expectation of their prospects being daily worse, that your highness may be assured there are 19 parts of 20 of the people throughout the kingdom who are desirous of a change. I've just put in brackets, and I don't know whether you want to elaborate a bit more, is that there was no mention of the crown
Right.
and the support was massively exaggerated.
Massively. Yeah.
And I've put Article 61 as a remedy rather than, if you're so unhappy with the king,
Yeah.
not,
Exactly right.
hold a court rather than, you know,
Completely right. Yeah.
fighting foreign invaders.
Yeah.
Is there
Yeah.
anything you want to
It's
add to that,
ludicrous.
Will?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It's ludicrous to be meddling around like this. Kind of, how could you possibly think there's any legitimacy to what you're doing? And to some extent, of course, they didn't know how this was all going to turn out either. It's just, um, but sort of meddling around in this kind of stuff. I mean, really, it's
I mean, this is treason.
yeah, completely.
This is moving on to the quotes. This is from the Stuart princesses who stole their father's crown.
Yep.
And again, I think it's Maureen Waller. The seventh subscriber, Henry Sidney, was the brother of the executed Republican Algernon Sidney and one of the William's most ardent admirers. He was the driving force behind the scheme, the liaison between William and the conspirators. As he confided to William in a separate letter, these seven were perhaps not the most prominent men in the kingdom, but the best he could persuade to go so far. You touched on this, Will, didn't you? Lords Halifax and Nottingham had been party to the discussions, but hesitated to make the final commitments.
Yeah.
The letter, after all, was treasonable, and the seven subscribers, later known as the Immortal Seven, had taken the precaution of signing themselves by code numbers only.
Really transparent.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing like authenticity and honesty.
In April, William had indicated that he would respond to an invitation from some men of the best interest and the most valued in the nation. He must have been disappointed that the seven were the best Sydney could come up with. Indeed, he, William, might have questioned how far the seven were the most prudent and most knowing persons that we have in this nation, as Sydney claimed in the letter which accompanied the invitation. Although revered as the Immortal Seven, they were hardly household names. That was Reluctant
Yeah,
Revolutionaries. That was
it's a
W.
good
H.
one.
Smith
That.
again. And the last one was touching on how they were rewarded later. Of the Immortal Seven who had signed the invitation of June 6th, received high honours. No, of the Immortal Seven who had signed the invitation of June, six received high honours within a few years of the revolution.
Yeah.
That was the descent on England, John Carswell.
So this is Hugh Trevor Roper in the epilogue to the Glorious Revolution in the Anglo-Dutch Moment, page 484. In their secret invitation to William of Orange, they urged him to come without delay, to save the liberties of England before it be too late. William did indeed come speedily, but he came for his own reasons, not theirs, to save the liberty not of England, but of his own country, which he believed was in similar peril, and whose peril meant much more to him than any threat to the liberties of or privileges of Englishmen. That's actually jumping ahead slightly. Apologies on that, but actually, I suppose it's the result of the invitation. It's just encapsulating what was what was really going on in that one. I think you're going to be quoting from Kenyon, aren't you? So
I've got a couple. I've obviously got this top one. I'll go through these now. The seven supposedly leading men who signed the so-called invitation of 30th of June 1688 were neither considerable nor representative. Sir John Dalrymple called them the Immortal Seven, whose memories Britain can never sufficiently revere. From the outset, both the Whig Party and historiographical tradition made much of this invitation, for it was the indispensable fig leaf with which to cover the embarrassing fact of the Whigs having collaborated with a foreign invasion.
yeah, that's the one I was thinking of. Yeah, good.
That was Jonathan Israel. The second one, overall, it was only these who had been proscribed who were ready for resistance, and they were in no position to start a revolt on their own and had to look to William of Orange. Those who had not been outlawed, but only at the most disgraced, were in a better position to rebel, but they did not attempt it, and they were reluctant even to encourage William positively to come over. The
Yeah,
Immortal Seven, who were eventually induced to sign a formal invitation to him, could not really claim to represent the leading elements in the nation, and that was Monarchy and Revolution, J.R. Weston. And the
good
last
one.
one, it was signed in cipher by the seven plotters who hid their identity behind numbers instead of appending their signatures. The Immortal Seven, as they were later styled. Their heads were now well and truly on the line. The letter was high treason. So a bunch of good moral-centered guys, Will, who
Fantastic.
who collaborated with their own invasion.
Absolutely. Pretty simple, really. Pretty straightforward, I think.
I don't think there's anything to add on that. It's
I mean,
pretty
there's so much,
self-evidence.
the viewers should know that actually, as you get into these books, and there are lots of them. That's the big one that Damien's just quoted from. It's just filled with raw source material of accounts of this kind of stuff, and how I just don't understand, Damien. I don't understand how historians can who are meant to be quite clever people, I would have thought, how they can reach these conclusions and not check them and just go with the suggested narrative and not see that there are problems in this.
Yeah.
It's breathtaking to me, actually. But anyway,
I
um,
think when we've spoke before about this kind of stuff, like when you mentioned that these were really good, intelligent historians who'd done a lot of research, but a few of them hadn't really understood constitutional aspect of things.
no, I mean you can sort of understand that because the constitutional commentary that we're putting over this requires one to have an understanding of natural law at the same time as doing this deep dive into the authentic constitution, trial by jury, having that piece as well. You can sort of understand that to some extent because actually even these authors who understand the complete upside downness of the history um, also are trying to kind of shoehorn the modern understanding of constitutional law into it, and they don't quite manage that either. That doesn't really make sense too. So you do get that. It's a little bit like later on we're going to be talking about economics a bit, and if you look at uh, economists as authors that talk about the effect of the Glorious Revolution, they don't quite understand some aspects of the constitutional part of it as well. So they're sort of trying to shoehorn it in as well, but they're exposing some extraordinary things about the economics that came out of and banking and things like that, which we'll get onto. I'm hinting at some things there. So they're specialists in their own piece, if you like, and so as long as you understand that they're exposing some real truths here in their expertise, in their field, but they don't quite understand necessarily outside that as well. There's a bit of that going on.
But this is clear cut, isn't it?
This is clear cut, yeah, absolutely.
The
From a historical,
actions,
yeah,
yeah.
historical perspective, it's just dodgy as hell, frankly. Yeah.
Have you read much of history that actually agrees legitimately with what went on, or outside of Macaulay?
No, I mean I've read some of the more conventional, but I mean I was in Waterstones quite recently, and I saw a book actually quite near the entrance actually to that touched in part in one chapter on the Glorious Revolution, and I said to my other half, "Oh, this will be interesting. Let's have a quick read of that." And she raised her eyes to heaven and said, "Not you and the Glorious Revolution again." So, so I read for the next sort of 15 minutes a little bit into that, and it's just I don't know how it's really just a repetition of just much repeated narratives, but they're not able to put all of this raw evidence against it as well. And so yeah, I've read some bits and pieces that come at it from the other angle, but it's not impressive. No.
Yeah, because I was talking to my daughter a couple of nights ago because she was telling me about what she was learning at school, history, and she's on to the 17th century stuff.
Oh,
Uh, she's done, we had a good conversation about Charles the First and his execution and why all that came about.
right.
And then we moved on. She hasn't done Cromwell. She's kind of skipped that a little bit and was on to William of Orange and what was going on and the stuff that she's coming home with,
Oh no.
suggesting that, James, just the typical, paint James as the tyrant
Yeah.
and paint William as the savior. And everybody in England were well behind William of Orange. And it was perfectly legitimate.
So
The
is she gonna
invitation, all that stuff. And I'm like,
just do choice quotes to throwing up in the classroom?
I said to her, I said, when's your parents' evening? Are we going to see the history teacher? Because we can have a good conversation about what he's teaching, about the curriculum.
You
So,
might not have to have a little bit longer than your allotted 10-minute slot.
yeah, not long after the invitation was issued, well, a few months later it was, I think, William of Orange released his Declaration of Reasons, 10th of October, 1688. On the 10th of October, William of Orange issued the Declaration of Reasons, emphasizing that he was entering England only to protect the people's religion, laws, and liberties, with extra focus put on the rumours being spread about the Prince of Wales. Like the letter of invitation from the Immortal Seven, the declaration would further attempt to legitimise William's actions. It was nothing more than an attempt to make a blatant invasion, to mask a blatant invasion of England. I've got a couple of quotes. William was urged to make the alleged hoax birth of a papist heir to the throne the justification for a military descent on England. And the second quote, the invitation also chided William for having sent his congratulations to James II on the birth of his son. The false imposing of that child upon the princess and the nation being not only an infinite exasperation of the people's minds here, but being certainly one of the chief causes upon which the declaration of your entering the kingdom in a hostile manner must be founded on your part. That was the Glorious Revolution, and it was Edward Valence.
I've got a couple of quotes.
Yeah.
If you want, do you want me to share this time? The Declaration of Reasons. So this is a little bit about from the sort of the logistics of it, which gives you an indication of how secretive they were being right up until the last moment. So this is quite interesting. Let's just chuck that one in there. So this is from, again, Jonathan Israel, his general introduction in the Anglo-Dutch moment, page 13. Furthermore, the text was deliberately withheld from the Whig leadership in exile in Holland until the last possible moment before the invasion, and with good reason, since the Prince, Fagel, and Hans Wilhelm Bentinck, in whose rooms the stocks of copies were kept sealed up, knew perfectly well that many Whigs would not like its contents. The pamphlet's subsequent distribution was a masterpiece of coordinated propaganda, which ensured that the declaration had an exceptional, indeed enormous impact, not only in England and the United Provinces, but generally. So that's quite interesting, and it's talking about its power, because it was a fantastic piece of propaganda, but look at what was, they were holding it back to kind of keep its power sort of. And then we've got this one, again from Jonathan Israel, but quoting Bowen, I think, in the history of the desertion. So the Prince of Orange's declaration was one of the greatest and most decisive propaganda coups of early modern times. Through his agents, Bentinck, who masterminded its distribution, arranged for stocks of copies to be transported to and concealed in key locations all over England and Scotland, and then released on the eve of the Prince's invasion. So we haven't got to that quite yet, but distribution was preceded by a campaign of rumour and reports with so much art and cunning spread that nothing could be more eagerly desired than a sight of the Prince of Orange's declaration.
Wow.
And so that's, Bowen, the history of the desertion. He's quoting there, the history of King William III, London, and also from the Prince of Orange, his declaration, London, 1688, page 3. And I've got one more, actually, which is quite interesting. The Dutch state put great effort into the production and deployment of this pamphlet. Around 60,000 copies were printed in English amid great secrecy by specially commissioned printers working simultaneously at The Hague, Amsterdam, and Rotterdam. This was a stupendous quantity for an age in which even the best-selling political pamphlets were rarely printed in more than 2,000 or 3,000 copies. Again, Jonathan Israel, the Dutch role in the Glorious Revolution in the Anglo-Dutch moment, page 121. So So you're getting a sense of how big this operation was and how much preparation was required and how much in the way of assets and resources were going to need to be employed to make all of this happen. The level of ingenuity and propaganda that went into this is absolutely staggering. So I'll stop sharing now, but just
It just makes you think, how on earth were they able to achieve that? You know, the level of work that was required and resource. I mean, even the printing presses, how
completely, yeah.
how quick were they?
It was a brilliant piece of organization.
The other thing what I wanted to ask about, Will, was that quote where it said it was kept secret from the exiles. That kind of says that they were the people behind actually writing the Declaration of Reasons.
Yeah, that's right. So we think of the sort of most of the propaganda leading up to this event in England, uh, was really the sort of the Whig philosophy, which is the left of politics, and yet here we are, where what was being put in place might even offend those
Yeah.
in Whig politics in England, but particularly those that were in exile over in Holland. Um, so yeah, it gives you an indication of how we really want to keep this quiet until because they might not like this. That's how bad things were getting.
What's outrageous as well is the fact that that propaganda was coming from the States and not the states of Holland and not
Yes,
really the English
yeah,
people
exactly.
to try and
It's pure
brainwash the
manipulation.
people,
Yeah,
the population of England to
yeah,
support them. Crazy.
yeah. It's incredible, isn't it?
The first one I've picked out was the Queen has brought forth a son, though there has appeared, both during the Queen's pretended bigness and in the manner in which the birth was managed, so many just and visible grounds of suspicion, that not only we ourselves, but all the good subjects of those kingdoms do, is that
Vehemently.
vehemently suspect that the pretended prince was not born by the Queen. And it is notoriously known to all the world that many both doubted of the Queen's bigness and of the birth of the child, and yet there was not any one thing done to satisfy them or to put an end to their doubts. To this Parliament, we will also refer the inquiry into the birth of the pretended Prince of Wales and of all things relating to it and to the right of succession. So that was a section of the Declaration of Reasons.
And there was a quote that I read out earlier where it talks about the fact that they never actually carried out that
No,
uh,
didn't. So
investigation.
I've actually got a couple of quotes that address that.
Hmm.
So no less cynical, indeed outrageous in James II's eyes, was William's declaring the Prince of Wales supposititious and insisting on the need for Parliament to make an official inquiry into the matter, when he and Princess Mary knew perfectly well that her brother was the king's legitimate heir. Absolutely awful.
Yeah.
The second one, for reasons of expediency, then, the warming pan story was dropped as an official justification for the revolution. Not surprisingly, the promised parliamentary inquiry into the birth of the Prince of Wales never materialised. As contractarian views of the revolution became more accepted, the warming pan story came to be seen as an embarrassment. That was an essay in another book. It was called The Warming Pan Scandal by Rachel Wheel.
Yeah, interesting.
And the last one was taken from Ungrateful Daughters. No European royal gave any credence to the allegation of the child being a changeling.
Short and sweet. Absolutely.
So there was no real support for these rumours outside.
Yeah.
Everybody knew what was going on. But I find it a little bit sickening when you look at, William of Orange, Mary, and Anne to a certain
And
extent.
his own
How,
family behaving like that is
yeah,
that's
it's really
disgusting.
awful.
So this is the let's remind ourselves that this is the quality that we're dealing with behind the push for the next 300 years rule of law of our country. This is what was pushing behind it.
And there's nothing
Great.
moral about it. There's nothing moral about the actions. They're all transgressions, just lie after lie after lie.
Yeah, the illegitimacy of this is breathtaking. And there's plenty more to come.
And this is the whole point, especially the way he put it in his declaration that he was saying, there's loads of evidence to suggest that the Prince of Wales is a fraud was utter nonsense,
Mm.
just lies.
Yeah.
There was more. I think there was like 40 or 45 testimonies given to the Privy Council under oath.
Yes.
I'm not sure the reasons why, whether that, I don't think that was a done thing. I think it was just done because of the situation, because they were registered in Chancery in the court and that.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that was an attempt to further legitimize it, but there was no requirement for that, I don't think.
Yeah. No,
Because
absolutely.
every other royal birth was probably treated in the same manner.
Hmm.
One of the main accusations, and I think it was Henry Compton, was suggesting that Princess Anne had been purposely sent away around
Right.
the time of the birth, which wasn't true either. It was
Yeah.
more so that she had either been schooled to do that, to just to go, for them to say, oh, to make that part of the scandal that she
Yes.
purposely sent away.
Yeah.
When really they knew it was going to be legitimate and she was going to witness it, and then there was no argument
Oh, the
because
games that are being
Mary was in
played.
The Hague, so
Yeah.
she wasn't there, but Princess Anne was in England.
Yes.
So there's another. This was more to do with because we're going to be going from in the next video from the declaration into the landing and the support on the ground
Yeah.
for the Prince of Orange. So since the English nation has ever testified the most particular affection and esteem both to our dearest consort, the princess, and to ourselves, we cannot excuse ourselves from espousing their interests in a matter of such high consequence and from contributing all that lies in us for the maintaining both of the Protestant religion and of the laws and liberties of those kingdoms, and for the securing to them the continual enjoyment of all their just rights, to the doing of which we are most earnestly solicited by a great many lords, both spiritual and temporal, and by many gentlemen and other subjects of all ranks. Now that was hitting for me, that was hitting that William at this point of writing the declaration, he knew
Yeah.
that army officers, key army officers, were going to desert.
Yes, I
He'd
think
hinted
so.
at that, and because this whole section was just based on where he was saying that he'd been solicited by a great many lords, both spiritual and temporal. We already know that's untrue
Yeah.
because it was the Immortal Seven, and two of them backed out at the last minute who had any sort of political weight. So we know that's not true. The many gentlemen we already know isn't true from what we've read because they didn't support it at all to start with. And the subjects of all ranks tells me that he knew about army officers because Princess Anne her friend was married to Churchill, and Princess Anne was married to the Prince of Denmark, who was a high up officer in the army at the time.
Yeah.
So all that held court, all them as well. So you've got Mary, the Prince of Orange, you've got Princess Anne and her husband, who was in James's army, meant to be loyal and serving for
Yes.
James.
Yes.
You've got
Yeah.
Churchill, who uh, who deserted. So
Yeah.
I,
He would have been getting it would have been quite a nail biting moment for him, I suspect, because he was obviously going to be obtaining worrying information for him, I suspect.
what else did I need to touch on that? Yeah, this is wrong as well. Will it says that their interests in a matter of such high consequence as from contributing all that lies in us for maintaining both the Protestant religion and of the laws and liberties of those kingdoms. James at no point was trying to overthrow the Church of England.
No.
There was no threat to
No.
Protestantism
No.
or the Church of England. The Declaration of Reasons was just giving people freedom of choice to worship and
Yes.
without persecution,
Exactly. Yes.
and the right to education, the right to hold an
The
office.
Declaration of Indulgence, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Not reasons.
yeah, sorry, the Declaration of Indulgence.
Yes.
So the second quote, in 1688, most of the nobles and gentry of England either remained neutral, playing no part in James II's overthrow, or else only jumped on William III's bandwagon at a late stage out of opportunism. Once it was clear that he was likely to succeed in breaking the power of his father-in-law. So that was the Anglo-Dutch moment. And then this one's a cracker, the last one. The final irony is that several of the seven, including Bishop Compton, who was not at all sympathetic to the ideals of religious toleration and liberty of conscience, which today we celebrate as one of the main achievements of the Glorious Revolution, turned against the revolution once they
Yes.
saw what it entailed.
Yeah. Interesting.
Have you got anything you want to add on that, Will?
No, I've got so a little bit of so on the manipulation and agitation and propaganda before the landing, which plays into some of what you've just been talking about. So a small group of army officers led by John, Lord Churchill, the Duke of Grafton, Percy Kirk, and Charles Trelawney, some of whom belonged to the Anglo-Dutch regiments or Tangiers garrison, took part in the army plot and began to act in collusion with William before the invasion. They were at first little more than an intelligence gathering organization and a debating club, and did not act in earnest until the successful Dutch invasion. In the summer of 1688, Englishmen had no love for the Dutch, and there was no general movement to oust James or a groundswell of opinion in favour of the Prince of Orange. So that's from Evelyn Cruikshank's The Glorious Revolution, edited. I used that in the first part. Jeremy Black, published Macmillan 2000, page 23. That's that one there. But yeah.
Good stuff. I don't think there's anything more to add. There's loads and loads of stuff to talk about in the Declaration of Reasons, but I feel it'll drag out too much.
Yeah, I think it's getting too much into the detail, but people could certainly go and
They can
read the
look at the
Declaration of
Declaration of
Reasons.
Reasons. It even mentions the Magna Carta
Yes,
in parts.
yes,
So that's why I
yeah,
found, because that piece of propaganda had come from Holland predominantly, they may have been advised on some points. Surely the Magna Carta was one of those points that they were advised on. Would they have known about that, Will?
yes, but I don't think they would have understood it properly. So they'll, it's a, it's one of those things, one of those buzzwords. Well, just make sure you get that one in there because the English will like
Yeah.
that. Um,
without really understanding the mechanisms.
Right, exactly. Yeah, without understanding the contradictions that they're actually putting in place by mentioning it in what they're trying to do.
Do you know
Yeah.
what else? What else I read? You know the dispensing power for Catholics to hold office. That college often asked James to dispense with that law for people that they wanted to appoint
Right. Yeah.
because it was like seen as the odd occasion. People accepted that. They never really challenged it. It was
Hmm.
only later on when it became, a free for all
Yeah.
that it was brought up. And
Yes.
the other thing, I mean, we're going back to that now. It's going to come up again at some point because obviously we're going to talk about the Declaration of Rights and the Bill of Rights and the coronation oath.
Yeah.
It's the suspending power. And I think I'm going to include James's coronation in that one.
Yeah, I think so. Yes. I mean, and the Coronation Oath Act, which is coming up, will need to be in that next part because that deals with supposedly the purported constitutional legitimacy to what is essentially the new rule of law that they're putting in place. Yeah.
Okay, well, I think this is the last of our slides. I just want to thank you for joining me on this. It's been interesting. It's been
It
a
has.
pleasure. And
Yeah,
you've
no, thank you. Fantastic. And yeah, there's quite a bit more to come. So and Damien's got a bit of an editing job on his hands.
I'm hoping this will be straightforward, to be honest. It's
It'll
all
be
there,
fine.
isn't it? The evidence. There wasn't really much in a way of argument, in a sense,
No, no, no.
trying to give 2 points of view and maybe try and see where the Immortal Seven were coming from, just what isn't there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, that's good.
So yeah, I appreciate your input as always.
Superb. Thanks, Damien.
Not a problem at all.